Hi, my name is Lily, and today I'd like to do a video that is going to be more about myself. It's going to be related to my experiences with type 1 diabetes and how I relate it to astrology and the concept of karma. The purpose of this video is to kind of show the connections that you can make with astrology and illness, and things that might seem like strings of fate and where the meaning seems confusing. I'm using myself as an example. Thinking of it this way helps me see the bigger picture and things that seem unfair in life and how to approach it without feeling like a victim, while also recognizing what it could be teaching me on a spiritual level. Astrology has been a tool for me to make sense of the things that seem out of our hands. So I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes just before my 12th birthday, which is an autoimmune disease where the immune system mistakes the pancreas cells that produce insulin as a foreign invader and destroys them. So the pancreas can't produce insulin anymore, and so in order to survive, I have to take daily insulin injections and monitor my blood sugar, as this is no longer an automatic process that takes place in my body. So I have, because I'm on this spiritual path, I always think about, like, what does this mean? All the time. I love asking why. And so I've spent a lot of time thinking about possible causes for that, karmically and spiritually, for that to happen. And because when you look at the nature of diseases according to Eastern worldview philosophies, it teaches that a lot of diseases are caused by energetic, mental, or emotional imbalances in your body. And when it remains out of balance for a long time, it can cause disease to develop in the body. So autoimmune diseases in particular are caused by the body's immune system turning and attacking itself for seemingly no reason that is apparent to Western medicine. And this makes me feel like spiritually there is a karmic influence to some, if not all, autoimmune diseases and chronic diseases. Sometimes autoimmune diseases can be related to a person's imbalance in their current life, so that disease develops. But in my example, I was only 11 years old. Was I such an out of balance 11-year-old to have manifested this disease to develop? I mean, maybe, but I don't think so. Just based off of, everything I've had to learn about this. But I think as a child, you're more of a product of your environment. You're still developing. You're more of a sponge that's absorbing the world around you. And so major decisions in your life, things that are affecting you, are going to be dependent on what your parents think is best for you. So type 1 diabetes and type 2 diabetes are different. Type 1 diabetes is the inability to produce insulin, while type 2 diabetes is resistance to produce insulin. Type 1 diabetes is generally onset earlier in life, when you're a child to young adult, and it has the autoimmune cause, which is roughly 5 to 10% of all diabetics. And type 2 is normally caused by environmental factors like poor diet, lack of exercise, sometimes drug and alcohol abuse, and it's typically developed later in life. You can be more susceptible to developing type 2 diabetes due to genetics or family karma, as I like to call it in this video. And when I say karma or family karma, I'm not saying like you did something bad and now this is like a punishment. It's more of an energy that you have put into the universe in past lives and experiences, and now it's returning to you. Karma itself is neutral, but people do interpret it typically as good or bad, depending on, what it's doing. But even when it appears to be more negative, it's serving a greater purpose. It can be challenging, but those challenges are supposed to teach us. Sometimes people say certain diseases are genetic, and I think that can also be considered family karma, or karma that you were meant to heal and address in your lineage. I had an aunt that was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes during her lifetime, but due to the lack of understanding about the disease at the time, she passed away when I was a child, before I actually developed the disease. I think I was like 5 or 6 or something. And there isn't really any other direct family history that we know of that would have influenced a genetic cause for me. I think I remember reading at some point that like maybe like back a few generations, if someone like if the mother of, you know, someone in my generations, my lineage, whatever, if the mother, say, didn't get enough magnesium, for example, during their pregnancy, then maybe like 2 or 3 generations later it could have caused something like this to develop. But there isn't a lot of research about that, especially, you know, due to the lack of medical technology back then. Were they even really looking at that? They don't know, but I remember reading that somewhere. No idea where, but something like that, you know. So this was obviously very difficult to have brought upon me as a child, and it did cause me to have to grow up kind of quickly, literally like overnight. I have to do a lot of extra things now just to stay alive and be more mindful than someone without it. I'm pretty used to it now, as it's been like 14 years, but it definitely took a lot of trial and error to get to a more balanced state of managing it. And it did teach me a lot of responsibility at a young age, which I think ultimately was better for me in the long run. I think it definitely helped shape me to who I am. And so when you're a child and you get diabetes and you're like 5 years old, the responsibility goes on your parents to monitor your blood sugar and take insulin. But since I was older, like 11, the doctors and the nurses thought it would be better to put more responsibility on me so I could be more independent. And they felt I was old enough to have that responsibility of doing my own insulin injections. So they said, you can't leave the hospital until you give yourself an insulin injection. And currently now we have like flex pens. Oh, my doggies. We have these, which are like way more chill, but back then it was like a vial and a syringe, and a little sus. But so that was definitely more intimidating. And you know, I didn't like injections like most people, like most children, but I definitely didn't expect to hear that. Didn't really know what to expect, actually, but I think that was definitely a pretty formative moment that I do remember out of the whole process. That was a pretty significant moment. And especially at that time, I was very like foggy and out of it. Like when you're like, I had lost a lot of weight and had been sick for weeks leading up to that. I was still recovering and I didn't even understand the disease or why I had to do this now. And it was a really big change very quickly, which was hard, but I think it has shaped me to who I am today. And I ended up being the one in control of my injections and blood sugar monitoring since the beginning. My parents were not as informed or aware of how it worked because I was naturally already really independent and didn't like being micromanaged at any age. So I definitely took that over always. They weren't really ever in control. Everyone is different, and I became very aware of how my body was responding to what I was doing, and I quickly knew more than most adults about it. Even as an adult, I am surprised to see how uninformed a lot of medical professionals are about it, from paramedics to ER doctors. Most people only know general information about diabetes unless they study the endocrine system. And most information about diabetes is about type 2, and there are a lot of differences about how treatment goes for that. But I get it. It is kind of like a specialty. You know, I wouldn't expect the average person to know much about it unless they have experience. But then maybe those people should not speak on things they don't know. That happened to me as a child a lot, where people would try to, they would try to give me advice or criticize the behavior I was doing because they felt they knew more. And that was really annoying because that happened a lot. And it really was that you don't know what you're talking about. Leave me alone. Autoimmune diseases are on the rise every year, and it's probably due to several different things. I'd say probably the chemicals and toxins in our food and atmosphere that we have. I'd also like to say lifestyle plays a factor. I think, especially in the United States, we have been majorly disconnected from the natural cycles of Earth by having a culture in which we have to spend so much time working. We have to get ready for work, commute to work, decompress from work. We're looking at screens all the time. We're forced to work to survive, and this is unsatisfying work when most companies don't really care about your well-being at all. And there isn't really much time to do anything else. And then this causes people to use substances to cope with this lifestyle that seems so unnatural and unfair to have to pay to exist on a planet we were born on. And, we actually do have enough resources for everyone to live comfortably, but there is this hoarding of wealth and those resources. So that is a lot, a lot to deal with. And then you have to pick and choose what to prioritize in your life. It's very difficult for most people to be able to work, eat healthy, have enough time for exercise, get enough sleep, take care of their family, and have some free time to socialize or do something you're passionate about. It's an impossible standard to uphold, and I think that's a big factor in what's pushing for big changes in the world at this time. Great change cannot happen when we are comfortable, so we need to become very uncomfortable to create and incite change in the world. So back to me. What's also interesting, in the weeks leading up to my diagnosis, I had strep throat, and I was very sick, and I just wasn't getting better. I remember I kept going back to the doctors. I'm like, I still feel like crap. I don't know what's wrong with me. And I was like missing a bunch of school, and like what actually ended up happening, which is kind of cool, is like that year I was in like 6th grade, and like because I was so sick, I kept missing my like standardized tests that were supposed to propel you into the next grade. And I missed the initial date of it, and then I missed the like makeup date. And I'm like, Mom, I don't know. I can't go to school. I feel like crap. And so I ended up not having to take it that year, and they ended up promoting me anyway because that was like the year I literally had straight A's the entire year, which is crazy because like I think that was the last time I did that. Like, I may have done it before, like in a younger grade, but that was pretty slay that they were like, all right, I guess you're doing all right. You've been going through a lot, whatever. I think you get the point. So that was cool. But yeah, so I was just not getting better. They're like, okay, let's test your blood sugar. And they're like, oh yeah, it's high AF, bro. It was like 628. And they're like, you need to go to the hospital. Like, don't pass go. Don't collect 100, 200, just go. I don't even think they billed my parents for like going. I think they're like, no, you need to go right now. Get the hell out of here. Get the heck out of here. Whatever. And yeah, so that was slay. And then, so type 1 diabetes can develop gradually or suddenly. So I've wondered if the strep throat could have been a trigger since my body was already trying to fight off an infection and it got confused and attacked my pancreas instead and killed it. Or if it was more of a symptom and a response to my pancreas not working properly, as diabetics are more likely to get sick, and specifically strep throat, due to the weakened immune system. Diving deeper into the spiritual side of this, I have always had issues with my throat chakra, with a blocked or unbalanced throat chakra, as they say. When I was younger, I was very quiet, and I had a hard time speaking up, standing up for myself, and speaking in front of people. Yeah, I was just nervous. I was just very nervous in general. I also associate this with Saturn in my birth chart, natal chart, as it is conjunct my Sun, Mercury, Mars, and Mars in the 6th house. Conjunct means like right next to or very close. Saturn can create a restriction upon expressing myself authentically, asserting myself, and being confident when it is next to all those planets together. This has gotten better over time as the Saturnian influence can indicate things improving over a longer period of time. But this influence carried on into my early adulthood. I was put into situations in which I had to overcome my fears and stand up for myself and speak my truth. And now even making videos on this channel has been a big part of overcoming those fears of expression. But even now, I tend to have throat chakra association health issues. I have had strep throat many times, and my tonsils are naturally very big. So if I do get sick, they can swell up a lot. And I also have hypothyroidism, which is another common autoimmune disease and is often paired with type 1 diabetes for women more than men, as they both deal with the endocrine system, and the thyroid is located in the neck near the throat chakra. People can have certain things that they are more prone to getting in relation to health issues, and I think that also relates back to karma or genetics, depending on how you want to look at it. The sixth house in astrology is associated with health and can also show if illness is going to be a prevalent lesson in your life. Because Saturn is there in my chart, it also reinforces this idea of there being restrictions in life due to health conditions and a lot of responsibility as a result of that. Saturn is also associated with karma. Saturn is conjunct my sun, which is the planet associated with your vitality and life force, and has definitely had its challenges in that regard. Also, my chart ruler is Mars. A chart ruler is the planet that is associated with your rising sign. My rising sign is Scorpio, which is associated with the planets Mars and Pluto. My Mars is also in the sixth house of health, really reinforcing the significance that health issues are supposed to be more of a prevalent part in my life in order for me to get more in alignment with who I need to be. Another correlation I see in astrology is in my progress chart. A progress chart is normally done at the beginning of your solar return or your birthday, and it can show you the types of things that may happen or need to focus on that year based off of the planetary positions, houses, aspects, and degrees in that chart. So in my progress chart, the year I was diagnosed with diabetes, Venus and Jupiter were making a conjunction in my fifth house in the sign of Pisces. Jupiter and Venus are both associated with diabetes. Venus can be indulgent in pleasures, while Jupiter typically brings expansion to what it touches. Type 1 diabetes being an excess of sugar in the blood, and a conjunction really shows the combining of these energies. The fifth house can also deal with pleasures and sometimes overindulgence, especially in the sign of Pisces. Pisces can be associated with escapism and can be more prone to substance abuse and trying to escape reality. Venus is also exalted in Pisces, and Jupiter is at home in Pisces, really strengthening these energies, which in this case wasn't exactly the most positive outcome. This was also pretty close to my South Node, indicating the karmic influence, as the South Node can deal with past life energies. This conjunction went exact the next year, and then my progressed moon was also in Pisces, really just having this major concentration of energy there at this time in my life. This did definitely cause a emotional weight on me as a child, and I think it also caused me to struggle with creativity somewhat as a result of this pressure and new responsibility. Fifth house also does have to do with creative energy. So what I take from all of this is that this was a fated event in development in my life, and I've been able to see this confirmation with astrology. It was karma, and now the nature of that karma could go either way, the reasoning behind it. It could be personal karma from my past life, as I've been someone to have been very self-sacrificing at the expense of myself, and that is something I had to grow out of. I think that can be related to my Pisces South Node or Pisces Venus, or in sidereal astrology, I'm a Pisces Sun, Mercury, and Saturn, so I definitely have significant Pisces energy no matter which system you want to look at it. And they can be prone to having that self-sacrificing tendency. I've had to work very hard at not doing that anymore, and I can say I'm definitely much more self-focused. I prioritize myself a lot more generally, but I still do sometimes feel the pull of those past cycles as situations pop up to try and suck me back in. I think diabetes has also pushed me to focus on myself and have to pay attention to my body more and not prioritize others' well-being over my own. With this fifth house influence as well, I could also see it as a past life that I struggled with overindulging, and this is the karma that's necessary to balance it out. Needing to learn how to not overindulge in things has been a big lesson for me, even though that's not inherently how I got diabetes. Like, I wasn't really like a child that ate a lot of sugar. My mom was pretty strict about that. It's a challenge I later encountered in my adult life, which I feel like most people deal with that at some point. Life's hard, so you eat a bunch of treats, little sweet treats. I could also see it being related to family karma or something in my lineage I need to heal, as they too have struggled with overindulging. And I feel a lot of people and families had that problem at some point. Feelings can be intense, and substances, food, and sex can all be ways to cope with this reality. Sometimes you can take on certain karmic challenges just because you want that kind of experience in this particular lifetime. So there's that possibility that I just wanted to play life on hard mode with that certain subconscious programming to overcome. And it seems to be pretty essential to my development on this journey. Like I said earlier, it brought a lot of responsibility at a young age, and perhaps that was necessary for me to be the successful person I am today. So, enough about me. That's all I have for you today. Bye-bye.